All right, welcome. It's February. We are off to another great event tonight at MSK Innovations. I'm TJ Halverson with the DeAngelis Group, an executive search firm serving the musculoskeletal industry. Today, we're welcoming everyone to another edition, another event at MSK Innovations. Three wonderful companies, innovators presenting their investment opportunities to a great panel. Today on the panel, we have a wonderful crowd favorite, Chris Lyons, back in action, David Dvorak, Adam Wolowick. Would love to give each of our panelists here an opportunity to quickly introduce themselves. We'll start with Chris. Take it away.
Thanks, TJ, and it's great to be back again. Love the format. It's always just a pleasure to meet everybody and to see everybody. I'm Chris Lyons. I'm CEO of Southern Metrics Consulting, and I work with many clients in the industry that have to have disruptive technology for me to embrace them and work with them all the way through the process of exit.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us, Chris. David Dvorak.
David Dvorak, and I've been in the med tech space for 25, 30 years, I guess now, in a variety of executive leadership capacities, principally with Steris and Zimmer, and have set up a family office and co-founded and early invested in a dozen different healthcare companies. So privileged to be with you and look forward to the three presentations today.
Yeah, well, thanks for taking the time to join us. And lastly, Dr. Wolowick.
Thanks, TJ. Appreciate you having me on today. It's an honor to be on with Chris and David, two industry veterans and legends. So I'm Adam Wolowick. I lead business development for Stryker's trauma and extremities business, focused on shoulders, foot and ankle, biologics, and fractures. I've been with Stryker 10 years, spent most of that time in our spine business, also doing business development and M&A. I am an orthopedic surgeon, practiced for 7 years before getting my MBA and moving over to the industry side. So again, great to be here and look forward to learning more about these exciting companies.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time. Now, before I introduce our first presenter, quick disclaimer, we're not a broker, dealer, nor an investment advisor. This is for informational purposes only, not to be considered investment advice. Please conduct your own due diligence prior to making an investment. Now, with that, we will introduce our first presenter, Leanna Caron at NEXILIS. Leanna, take it away.
Okay, thank you, TJ, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name's Leanna Caron. As was stated, I'm the CEO of NEXILIS. Our technology is first going to be deployed in spinal fusion procedures. So as you well know, successful spinal fusion depends largely on screws staying securely in place to hold the construct firm while the bones fuse. So our innovation is the application of a polymer that reinforces the bone prior to any screw being placed. Our technology and our mission as a company really is to revolutionize how screw stabilization, therefore improving patient outcomes and their quality of life. So why now? So simply stated, there's no safe nor affordable solution that exists today that can be easily deployed with any pedicle screw and which is FDA approved for that purpose. This problem is a large one and it will continue to grow given an aging patient population and our sedentary lifestyles. To frame this problem more specifically, there's the following facts. There's about 450,000 spinal fusion procedures done annually in the United States, with approximately 2 million pedicle screws that are implanted into the thoracolumbar region of the spine. Pedicle screw loosening can impact up to 72% of patients, and the reasons for which include poor bone quality, improper or suboptimal screw placement, and patient demographics such as smoking and or obesity. And these factors impact a screw contact with the bone and or the mechanical load that's being placed on the screw. So when these complications occur, this impacts not only the patient but also the institution, given the need for revision surgery, prolonged length of stay, rehabilitation, and the surgeon, and possibly from a litigation point of view, as well as the society given the lost productivity. So a safe and cost-effective approach to secure the screw is definitely needed. Our immediate stabilization system, otherwise called ISS, is a platform technology that has a very straightforward concept. The concept is reinforce the bone to improve screw purchase. The kit consists of single-use components, and the predominant one is what you see here, the cylindrical polylactide tube, a polymer tube, that reinforces the bone, and there's guiding pins as well that are the two single-use components, as well as some multi-use components which are used during the surgery and also for the cleaning of the device. The main multi-use component is what you see next to number 4. That's the sonotrode, which emits the ultrasound energy to melt the polymer into the bone within seconds. This system has been successfully deployed in patients in European clinical trials, and our development partners have the ability to manufacture for the eventual market needs. The ISS can be the universal addition to any pedicle screw. Importantly, our approach directly addresses the fact that screw-secured implants fail when there's reduced surface area contact between the screw and the bone. I'm just going to show you a video of the procedure here. So from a procedure point of view, after the K-wire is in position, the protective sleeve would be placed, and that protects the soft tissue. The implant bed preparator or drill is placed in, and there's depth demarcations to indicate how far down into the implant bed to go. Then the guiding pin is introduced. The polymer sleeve, either 1 up to 3 polymer sleeves can be placed, gently pushed into the implant bed with the sonotrode. Sonotrode is turned on, it melts the polymer sleeves in about 5 seconds. Energy supply stopped, it resolidifies immediately, and there you have an immediately reinforced implant bed for placement of any pedicle screw. So that's the procedure. It really takes about a minute to implement. It's safe. The polymer is a well-known polymer that's been deployed previously. You get precise placement. It doesn't flow where it need not be because it's melting quickly and resolidification quickly into the area. It's effective, and I'll show you what I mean by effectiveness in the next slide. Very easy to use, can be used in open or minimally invasive procedures, and the polymer is durable. It's going to stay 100% stable through the fusing of bones, and it degrades after about 1.5 to 2 years, at which point it then goes away completely. So the key differentiating feature of the ISS is our innovative approach to using this established polymer to reinforce the bone, therefore improving the outcomes of screw-secured implants. The benefit is seen here. So what you really have is reduced risk of screw loosening, which is significantly better than screws alone. And equivalent to bone cement is seen by the overlapping confidence intervals. And this was done in dynamic bending tests in human cadaver vertebrae. From a competitive perspective, the features and the benefits of our technology align well with some of the shortcomings of existing approaches. Today, there's a lack of FDA-approved options that safely addresses the need to reinforce the bone. PMMA used in this application would be off-label. And right now, surgeons typically just look for a larger diameter screw to get the purchase they need into the bone, which increases, to some extent, the risk of fenestrations. The only device that has an improved indication for both primary and secondary revision surgeries is the Alaris pedicle screw system that you see in the middle here. This is a screw system with an optional polymer pin. However, the system, while FDA approved, has not been successfully commercialized to date in the US market. Other technologies like Augment are reserved for revision surgeries and don't confer any immediate screw stability. So there is room for an improvement in this space, and we believe that the ISS does meet what the market needs, which preserves the bone volume, can be combined with any pedicle screw or a standard screw from an economic perspective. It immediately reinforces the bone, and increases the surface area contact between the screw and the bone so that you have superior screw purchase. From a market size, it's a pretty large market with a healthy growth rate. With 450,000 spinal fusions done a year, and if we consider our indicated region, which would be the thoracolumbar region of the spine, consider the fact that there's probably about 50-50 split between single and two-level fusions. And if we price it to that higher end of the pricing spectrum at $1,500 per screw reinforced, you have a TAM of over $2.8 billion. When you consider the confounding factors that would increase a patient's risk of screw loosening, you end up with a SAM of over $1.4 billion. And then a SOM will really be dependent upon final pricing and the reach of how many customers can be attained. Given growing U.S. healthcare costs and the added scrutiny of delivering value for money, one of our go-to-market strategies was to evaluate the market in terms of payer perspective and to consider whether or not we would need additional coding. When we did this analysis, we've been able to confirm that the ISS will not be specifically reviewed by payers for either positive or negative position as it relates to coverage, because it will be considered adjunctive to the surgical intervention and not integral to it. So the ISS sleeve will not therefore require any special or specific coding, but rather fit into existing coding and payment methodologies for spine fixation. The reimbursement levels for these existing codes today does provide for sufficient margins to cover any incremental costs of the ISS sleeve. And furthermore, the ISS sleeve costs would not be deemed to be materially impact to any of the claims accounting in the institutions. Finally, when you just put the payer hat on for a second, when combined with a standard screw, so instead of going to a larger diameter screw or a fenestrated screw, as in the case if one was using PMMA, there's likely to be cost savings because the standard screw cost is considerably less than some of these more sophisticated screw designs. The proposed indication is shown here for the first approved application, which would be to enhance fixation of pedicle screws in the non-cervical region of the spine. We've already had discussions with the FDA who have confirmed that this would be an appropriate indication. We would follow the predicate of Alaris. We've had our animal protocol reviewed by the FDA. It is 3/4 of the way enrolled. And we've also had discussions with the EA with respect to testing plan for the 510K application. Now that's for our first indication, but when you consider that there are other regions in the body where screws are applied that are at risk of screw loosening, for example, insufficiency fractures, pediatric spinal deformity like idiopathic scoliosis, osteogenesis imperfecta, or sports medicine applications, just with those alone, there's about over 1.5 million additional surgical procedures that could benefit from having improved fixation. We haven't ascertained where we would go next, but this is just to indicate that there's other applications that are possible. From a patent perspective, we have broad patent protection thus far with 4 patent families, many going out to 2036, if not beyond. We have also our method patent. It's important to underline it's not restricted to the medical field. We've conducted freedom to operate in the US and in Europe by external counsel, and that has been positive. So we find ourselves in a good patent situation, and we're awaiting a newer patent here with our cannulated hand grip. Where we find ourselves today is on the path to 510K application. Like I said, we are in the middle of our preclinical safety study, following which we're going to be starting our verification and validation testing. And we will redo our market access assessment to see if there is additional coding that would be beneficial to the technology and make decisions on a final pricing. Our go-to-market strategy would include a staged launch, first having a targeted approach with 10 to 15 KOLs, leveraging their experience to communicate the benefits of the technology before going more broadly. And we would most likely have to rely on a distributor network to be able to accomplish a more wide-scale product adoption. We believe that the technology could be seen as a valuable asset for a strategic partner, whether that be a small or a large strategic partner. We appreciate that a market leader is looking to preserve their innovation and bring something new to the market while preserving their market share and their presence, while a smaller player is looking to increase their share of voice to improve their portfolio market share. So we see that this could be a nice addition to either of these types of strategics. Here you see our team. It's small. We're only 4 FTEs. I've got 3 great development engineers that are focused on the device optimization and the necessary testing required for the 510K. I'm supported by a board. All of us are investors in the company. Hans-Jörg Ems used to be the past president of Synthos Spine, and Oliver Walker currently sits on the board of Curos Biosciences, as well as some other companies, and he's also got some private equity involvement. And our 3 medical advisors that we work with routinely are Dr. James Bruffy in California, Ash Sahai in Florida, and Dr. Stevens, who's in Arizona. So what we're currently trying to do right now is raise $6 million that would secure our first indication in the largest market, which is the US. The use of the funds would be pretty specific. First and foremost, to optimize the device. The device has been successfully deployed in studies in Europe. However, we feel that we can optimize it further. So it's to get us over the finish line with the device, to generate the preclinical data and complete the histopathology work that's needed for the sheep study that's currently underway, and to execute some other key assessments required for the 510K submission. We believe that following receiving our 510K, we would need probably an additional $3 million capital to get to cash flow positive. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great. Thanks, Leanna.
Thank you.
Leanna, I was just going to confirm that the additional procedural time is about a minute, you said, per screw.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's the right way to think about it, huh? So it's limited. And explain what you foresee in the way of any potential complications to the extent there was a revision. It sounds like after 1.5 years, 2 years, it's a complete non-issue. If something were to occur prior to that time period, any complication?
Good question. So because the mechanism of how we're reinforcing the bone is different than the current approaches, there's no connection being made between the screw and the bone, unlike how PMMA is being used and unlike how LRS is being used. We're simply filling the bone pores with our polymer. So a revision surgery would simply require one to unscrew the screw because there's no bond that needs to be broken. There's no fragments that would circulate unnecessarily. I think the other key thing to keep in mind is because it melts quickly and resolidifies, it's not going to flow, again, unlike PMMA, which could flow inadvertently outside of the space that you want it to go into. Like an
elegant drywall anchor.
That's exactly the concept. You got it.
Thank you.
So, Leanne, I was going to ask real quick. So you guys are a Swiss company, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any relationship between y'all and spine welding?
No, except for being Swiss.
Except for being Swiss. Okay. I'm very familiar with their technology. They use the ultrasound. They've been trying to get to market forever in terms of the US. IP is clear between the two.
Yes. So the difference is their IP is around their screw, obviously, but maybe there's some issues there. Theirs is a polymer pin, so our IP is around the cylindrical shape of ours, as well as there's some specific IP that differentiates us in terms of how the sonotrode access is different. But we've cleared that, actually, so that has been done with external counsel. We don't have their IP, they don't have our IP, and any time we've had any discussions with respect to potential infringement, we've been sure to check that out and make the modifications that we've needed to do. The other big difference is theirs is a screw system that is deployed with their polymer pin. Ours is the polymer sleeve itself, which could go with any pedicle screw system.
Right, exactly. And your sleeve goes in first, whereas they put the pin into the screw and then
into the screw. That's right.
Yeah.
So I think there's probably some slight, the benefit is that's why they're a predicate for us. So they've got their 510 clearance. It's the same polymer, in fact. And when we think of how it works, it's working similarly, except they're anchoring the tip versus we're reinforcing the bone along the screw body. And as I understand from certain surgeons, there's even some interest of getting close to the pedicle itself, because they feel that by reinforcing that whole area, you're actually preventing more of that movement and where the forces are being applied from there being some instability.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We've got one question, a few questions actually from the chat here, Leanna. One asking, how does the performance, both immediate and long-term, of ISS vary based on bone density? Is there any data you have around that?
So our data is limited so far, but as part of our FDA application, we will be testing different densities in saw bones to be able to ascertain how that works. Having said that, the 2 patients that we did treat in our trial in Europe before we stopped the European approach, one was osteoporotic and one was osteopenic, and we've had over 2-year follow-up data on both those patients who had a successful fusion. Actually, it was a fracture repair model, so we're successfully treated that way. But we will complete more of that work as part of the 510K as recommended by the FDA.
Okay.
Leanna, do you have any sense of cost, what you're looking to charge for this, and sort of a view on COGS? It may be too early for that given where you're at, but as price of pedicle screws continues to come down, so I think that's an important factor here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when we look at the competitive landscape, and I'm going to maybe give two data points. So we understand that first, I understand that Augment may be charging between $8,000 to $1,000 per screw reinforced. So that's maybe one data point to look at. Another data point could be the Influx DBM that's being used off-label, which is at $1,500. When we've done market research with surgeons, not surprisingly, surgeons recommend a lower amount. So they're saying if you add another $500 to each screw, that's fine. What I can say is our margins are pretty considerable. We're talking if we're at the competitive pricing range, we're going to have 90% margins. It doesn't cost a lot to produce this, the cylinder. And what we're really thinking about today is, would the surgeon rather have a piece of a cylinder that they decide how long and how long it should be and where to cut it, or should we produce what we're planning on today is an 8mm sleeve that you stack depending on the implant bed you want to reinforce? It's more costly to develop the 8mm sleeve, so maybe going to a 25mm sleeve is a way to go and just have it cut based on the amount you want to reinforce. So that's where we see that we're going to try to optimize the price and the profits. But I think that we're well in the range, very comfortably, of where the competition is at today.
And just to follow up, if I stack 3 of your 8mm up, do I melt once or do I have to melt multiple times to do that?
You melt once. Yeah, once. You stack them all in hard, you put the sonotrode in it, and it melts. It actually melts a little bit faster than a single piece because you have a little bit of gap, and it allows for a quicker melting. But we're talking here fractions of a second faster, so it's not really that big of a difference.
Wonderful.
Well, thanks for a great presentation, Leanna. We'll move on to our next presenter, will be Dr. Rob Amiot at RELJA. Rob, take it away.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity. My name is Dr. Rob Amiot. I'm the founder of RELJA Innovations. I'm a foot and ankle surgeon. So RELJA Innovations develops products addressing the foot and ankle surgeons' unmet needs in the bunion market. This is basically me doing thousands of bunion surgeries over the last 20 years and saying, you know, what are we missing? How can we do this better? How can we make it easier for surgeons? How can we make it cost effective? And how can we make it faster in the operating room and have better patient results? And so these are the products we're developing. It's a huge market. It's a $2.3 billion market in the US. We've taken all the risk for you. We have 4 commercialized products. They are all FDA cleared. They're all reimbursable. They are all IP protected. We have sales of over $700,000, truly through grassroots efforts. And we have a bunion offering. We have a product for every single bunion that walks through the door. Similar to spine and to hip replacement and knee replacement, bunion surgery is a very, very common large market. There's over 350,000 to 400,000 of these done per year. Has a really nice annual growth rate, as you can see here, and again, a $2.3 billion market. And so this slide really is to show that there are mild bunions, there are severe bunions, and there are arthritic bunions. Now, I'm grossly oversimplifying this. My colleagues would be upset with me for saying this. But we have a product, as you can see below each of these, that addresses each different type of bunion deformity out there. And we'll go into the products. So when looking at developing a product, I always say, okay, well, what's the problem in the market and how are we going to fix it? So the problem in the market is this: everybody wants a minimally invasive bunion surgery performed on them. If you have a bunion, you want it done minimally invasive, just like if you have to get your appendix out, you want it done laparoscopic, right? So there really is no system out there in the market that has a really easy learning curve, and it's super reproducible for surgeons to learn. The competitors' products out there, you know, the journals will show that it's 25 to 38 surgeries before there's competency with that. Some of these procedures that are done, you have a very, very minimal amount of bone-on-bone contact, which makes all of us as surgeons really nervous. There's a high reoperation rate. So one study showed that 9 out of the first 30 surgeries during that learning curve for a new surgeon had a reoperation rate. Just, you know, not acceptable. And so this is why there's only about 5 to 10% of surgeons out there doing minimally invasive bunion surgery procedures at this time. So our solution to this is the RELJA MIS Chevron bunion system. And so what we basically have done is taken the traditional Chevron bunion procedure that has been done since 1973, and we have kind of modernized this to take it from a 6 centimeter incision to a 1 centimeter incision. And chevrons are still very common today. There's about 100,000 of them done each year in the United States. And so we've designed this precision guide to allow you to perform this same surgery, make a chevron cut in the bone, move the bone over with this very stable chevron cut, and put a screw across it, all through a precision guided system with a 1 centimeter incision. It has a short learning curve of 4.7 cases, much less than the competitors. And we've had, through a white paper that we did with numerous different surgeons, we showed that patients heal, they return to regular shoes on an average of 6 weeks, versus a lot of patients with the open chevron and these open bunion procedures, they're not into shoes until it might be 10 to 16 weeks before they're into shoes, depending on the patient. So our average reimbursement for this particular product, which is a single-use sterile pack product, is $1,850, and our cost of goods on this is $275. And we have inventory on hand for about 600 cases. So problem number 2 in the bunion market is to have a minimally invasive bunion reduction clamp that you use for a different type of bunion surgery called a lapidus type bunion surgery. And it's nice to have these clamps that kind of hold this first metatarsal in the perfectly correct position while you apply your hardware. And so this is a very, very hot market right now in the bunion space. And there's a lot of companies, as you can see down below here, have these different product offerings. Some of these look really cumbersome, which they are. So the problem with these competitors' clamps, in my opinion, as a surgeon, they are radio opaque. So you take an X-ray, which you can see it kind of on the top right here. I take an X-ray to see my correction and make sure my little sesamoid bones are in the correct position, and it's blocked by all the metal in this clamp. A lot of these require incisions, additional incisions that patients don't love. They're time consuming to apply. They don't correct in all the planes that we want. They have a learning curve to some of these. I mean, you look at all the pins and knobs and gizmos that you got to crank around to get these things in the right spot. So they have a significant learning curve, and they also require hospital sterilization. So we came up with the RELJA clamp, and we call it the RELJA clamp because it has more indications than just utilizing for bunion surgery. So our clamp, the features of it are it's radiolucent. There's no incisions. It corrects in all three planes, which surgeons want. It's very simple. And when I say that, I mean very simple. My second-year resident can put this thing on without any issues whatsoever. And that tells me, like, hey, if he can do it, anybody can do it. It's applied in less than 4 minutes. It's faster than the competitors. It saves operating time. And again, it's single use. It's sterile packed. The average reimbursement rate that we are getting for this clamp is $995. And our cost of goods on this is $125. And so here you can see in the photos here, the clamp sitting on the foot. We designed this so it would sit distally, so it does not get in the way of placing our screws and plates. And then on the bottom part here, you can see how the clamp, the only thing that you will see on an X-ray are these 2 pins in this area. And so let's see here. I have a video, but I made this into a PDF. So I am going to, if I can just show this. So I'll just do a very 2-second demonstration. So here is our clamp. It's already on the foot. You can simply rotate your frontal plane, which is important to surgeons. You get your correction that you want, and you simply lock down thumb screw number 1. Next, we have a large deformity of bunion where there's a big space between the two. You simply squeeze these together to get the correction that you desire. Once you do that, you simply lock down thumb screw number 2. The beauty of our clamp is it allows you to then move this first metatarsal in your sagittal plane to get it exactly where you want. Once you have that exactly where you want, you can then lock this one down. And even though we've done that, we can still distract and compress. So if we need to do a little extra joint prep that we're fusing right here, our clamp allows us to do that. And so it's, as you can see, that took a very short amount of time to do that. And it's very, very simple to utilize. So our product number 3 is a Lapidus plate and screws. And so you can see here, it's this blue plate and screw. And this pairs with the RELJA clamp. So the clamp basically holds your correction exactly where you want it until you put in permanent fixation. Well, we also offer the permanent fixation, and it affords us to own that entire case rather than just getting reimbursed for the clamp itself. So there's at least 100,000 of these procedures done per year. So it's a very, very common procedure done. Our average reimbursement rate, and I'm sorry I did not update this, but our numbers from 2024 just came in and we're right around $3,200 for 2024 of our average reimbursement rate. Our COGS on this are $1,000. Product number 4. This is another bunion surgery product, and this is for that patient who has an arthritic big toe joint. So they have a bunion, but they also have arthritis in the joint. This addresses both the arthritis and the bunion by fusing the joint. We have this product in our offering so that we can address every single bunion that walks through the door. Again, this is a very, very common procedure done. And there's about 100,000 of these performed every year. Our average reimbursement rate on this is about $2,700 to $2,800, and our cost of goods on this is $850. So don't take my word for it. Some of these are surgeons I've never met, giving me great feedback. Hey, I believe you have the best clamp on the market. Hey, the clamp turned out great yesterday. I love the clamp, really quick and easy to use. And you can see many more positive statements from doctors. So we have an amazing team, and I won't go through everybody here for just to keep the presentation short, but I will highlight that we brought on Dave Kelly as our Chief Commercial Officer. Dave has been in the foot and ankle space for a long time. He was instrumental in building up Trilliant and selling Trilliant to Enovis. And he, instead of retiring, he decided to join our team, and he has been just an amazing addition. So our company timeline, very quick. We were founded in 2019, product development 2021. Our minimally invasive chevron came out late in 2022. Our clamp and foot plating system came out in 2023. And so now, you know, we've taken the risk. We have the products approved, commercialized, we're ready to go. And now we're looking for an investment to really scale the company. And speaking of scaling the company, how are we going to do that? Well, talking to CEOs of companies who have been acquired, they agree with me that the best way to build sales is through a KOL network. Nothing is better in promoting your product versus respected surgeons in a particular geographic area, talking to other surgeons through maybe it's a cadaver lab, maybe it's a Sawbones and a happy hour or something like that. But these really can increase usership of your product. We'll also work with this, expanding our network distributors and channel partners. We have Fuse Medical and BioPro that are also selling our product right now. We have another company that we're bringing on that we're in discussions with at this point to non-exclusively private label our product to. We also have ancillary marketing activities, trade shows, webinars, etc. And we're also looking at doing some value-added research. So our financials, 2023, we had sales of $202,000. 2024, we finished the year right around 465-ish thousand in sales. Our 2024 numbers, as you can see here, for our different products, but we had 244 cases performed in 2024, and David Kelly didn't come and join us until later in 2024. So those are still kind of really through grassroots efforts. And so we're getting ready to scale the company and really grow. And what's interesting here is, you know, we can get to 5 million in sales with these products because of the nice reimbursement. And we don't need to get, you know, 400 doctors. I mean, we can get to 5 million in sales with 100 doctors using our product on a semi-regular basis. And so, you know, I feel like these goals are truly attainable. So we're looking to raise $1.5 million, and what we will use those funds for. And I guess the reason why we're only looking for that is we're really close to cash flow positive right now. We're about 5 surgeons away from cash flow positive. But we're bringing on the 1.5 million for sales and marketing efforts, for incremental staffing. We certainly would love to bring in an amazing CEO to take my job and take our company to the next level. Some inventory, some research and development, clinical research. So just some comps out there. Enovis, I talked to one of the doctors who's with SDI, and Enovis purchased this clamp right here, the clamp only, nothing else, for 14 million. Treese sold a Lapidus custom, Red Point sold to Treese a custom cutting Lapidus guide with based on CT scans and the software and the IP with that for 30 million. Those are on the very, very early startups. And then we have the late startups, I would call it, on the right side of this, which is Trilliant and BME, much more different than the ones on the left. But those sold, as you can see, for 80 million and $97 million. So And I guess our goal is to try and raise a total of 3.5 million. We've raised right around 1.9 so far. Our goal is to try and get to 5 million in sales, show surgeon adoption, and try and get a 8 to 12x on that with a company out there that really is semi-anemic in the bunion space, and we have targeted which companies those are. And some of those companies have already started talking to us about our product, which is exciting. So why should you invest in a bunion company? Well, because we're making bunions great. We've taken the risk for you. We're FDA cleared on all of our products. We're reimbursable. We have well-established CPT codes. And one of them, the Lapidus surgery through CMS, doubled the reimbursement to hospitals in 2025 versus what they were giving hospitals in 2024. So that really helps us keep our ASP high. We're IP protected. We've done a freedom to operate, and we have granted claims on our clamp, and we have granted claims on our chevron. We have another product that we plan to kick out at some point in the next year that will be a small financial investment, and we have a patent pending on that as well. We have good inventory on hand of about $1 million of inventory. We have $700,000 in sales, and it's a huge market. So we're seeking $1.5 million investment, and we feel we're at a nice price for that of a $6.5 million valuation post-money. And that is all I had. I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Good job, Doc.
Thank you.
Impressive. I mean, it's pretty cool. My first question is, it looks like, based on what you're saying from a time frame and when you're going to achieve, north of $5 million, your exit window is 26 to 27, roughly, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So the question I would have is this: do you guys have any intention of actually? I saw that you had field support. Would those be full-time employees or an extension of the distributors? What's the plan there?
We will likely have. We have a chief commercial officer now. We will utilize a KOL network and distributors and hope to grow through those models.
Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, what's the minimum that you guys are accepting as investment for the 1.5?
A 65,000, I guess, would be what I'd like to have the minimum be. Just keep our cap table cleaner.
Yeah. I think it's just good for the audience to hear it so they're not having to ping you later.
Yeah.
Very good. I like it because I look at this and I think about it from a rep's angle, and I'm like, man, Rob, I'm leading with the instruments to sell more stuff. I mean, that's so self-explanatory. And I've seen a lot of these technologies, and all I got to say is good job.
Thank you so much. And I forgot to mention that the RELJA clamp, I've used it on Liz Franck fracture dislocations. It works amazing. I had a surgeon use it on a infected foot as basically an X-fix that stayed on for 2 weeks. I had a hand surgeon say he wanted to use it for an ulnar shortening osteotomy. So that's why we called it the RELJA clamp. It's not just for bunions. There's other applications, but I don't want to get too much into the weeds on that. But there's more opportunities for sales there.
That's great.
Doctor, just to ditto Chris's comments, that's incredible progress on a $1.8 million investment, but I know it really speaks to the experience base and an innovative mind put to work over a couple decades that leads to this. So great work. Just to confirm, your IP efforts include FTO, and you feel comfortable with that level of diligence?
I do. Yes, I do. I have a great IP attorney, and I have a person who also was a COO at a company who is well versed in patents, and he agreed with our IP attorney that he felt that our granted claims and our freedom to operate were solid.
Great.
And our clamp's been out for 9 months, and Treese hasn't sent us a letter yet, so I think we're looking pretty good.
And the raise of 1.5 relative to a $3 million round, are you thinking to do that in tranches, or is 1.5 the ask that you think gets you all the way across the goal line?
Everybody always says you think it's going to get you there, and it never does. So I don't want to eat crow on this, but all of us that are deeply invested in this, we want to grow this, and if it takes more money to do it, and we have to dilute our equity a bit to get us there, we will. But our hope is that this will get us there.
So $3 million.
Yeah. I don't have much else to say. I think Adam, go.
I agree with Dave and Chris. I think it's a nice product, very simple, and sort of an elegant solution. I agree with Dave. My concern here is, are you raising enough to get you where you say you're going to go? And you said it generally costs more and takes longer than you think. And so if you're going out and raising around, you may want to think about what that number looks like and whether you tranche it out or stage it out. But I would just think about that a little bit more, because your use of proceeds is pretty slim, and you got a really tight window you got to thread the needle on. So I would just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you, Rob. Great presentation.
Thank you.
We'll wrap it up today with Régis. Why don't you take it over, Régis, at Flowbone?
All right. Good evening. So is it displaying it from across the Atlantic?
We've got it.
All right. So good afternoon, everybody. So as you may notice, I'm from the French part of Switzerland. It's late here, around midnight. So hopefully you can pick up my French accent and still understand what I will say, because it's a late night. So we'll see. So this is a classic forward-looking statement that you're all used to. And at Flowbone, we envision a world where everybody enjoys active aging. And of course, it means the family gatherings, enjoying sports, I guess in your kind of areas on the West Coast, maybe going surfing, and in Switzerland, and personally for myself, it's mostly skiing and hiking. But there is some interference ahead, potentially, because when we age, our bones weakens, and if you have osteoporosis or suboptimal lifestyle factors like smoking or sedentary lifestyle, then it's even worse, and then it's even getting more a risk to get fractures or have weak bones during some surgery that would make complications. And one of the most dramatic events is breaking a hip. So personally, in our family, we lost the grandmother of my wife because of hip fracture. She died just 6 months after the surgery, never really recovering from the surgery and the fact that you have to do some exercising, loss of mobility, and so on. And she's among the 25% actually of patients over 65 who dies from a hip fractures. And then there's another quarter who end up in a nursing home. So it's not really a great way to enjoy active aging. And actually in the US, it's a huge issue, and also worldwide, because with the aging of populations, all these numbers are expected to triple by 2050. So the market is colossal. Just in the US, it's a multi-billion market. If we count that there's about 1.8 million people at very risk of hip fractures, and then you can add up about 500,000 that are at risk of complications after hip replacement, such as implant loosening or periprosthetic fractures. So the current solutions have many drawbacks. So you can use bone cements to reinforce the bone, but we know it's a foreign material. that can stay there for long, and then there is a risk when you have a future surgery that will impede and make it much more complicated and costly, for example, for hip revisions. On the other hand, you can use drug for osteoporosis. They have been there for a long time, but we know that they have limited efficacy in the hip. They bring some side effects, and the most potent drugs are quite expensive and also constraining in terms of the regimen, because you have to do sometimes daily injections. So there is definitely a need for new solutions that is simple, a procedure that could be a one-off procedure with a natural mode of action, and that you get this rapid strengthening. So at Flowbone, we develop a percutaneous procedure that you will be able to get this strengthening effect within weeks or months, and then that will last you for quite a while in terms of the strength of your bone. So this product comes in a pre-filled syringe ready to use, and the core of the syringe, of course, is a gel that allows to rapidly form and restore natural bone strength. So this can be very simply injected via a cannula into high-risk regions, be it for pre-operative bone health optimizations, for enhancement of hip replacement, or filling surgically created defects, or rescuing implants by treating bone defects or bone loss. So how does it work? So the gel is basically a matrix of hyaluronic acid with a contrast agent, ioxol, with some nanoparticles of hydroxyapatite, the mineral that is found in bone. So we managed to get a gel that is very soft, flexible. It's non-hardening, contrary to bone cements, so it will flow very easily into areas of low bone density. And then once the gel is in place, the nanoparticles will act like seeds for biomechanics. And then you have a process of bone healing and the process of degradation of the hyaluronic acid, and of course with the local environments like the blood and so on. So all this will favors blood formation of vessels. It will favor cell adhesion and proliferation, and of course osteogenic differentiation of the mesenchymal stem cells that in the end will allow to form rapidly new bone, and then most importantly leave no residues behind. So within weeks you don't see nothing else but new bone form. So we did several animal studies. So here, this is the latest one that we published in December in Bone, where we could show in osteoporotic rats that we had 10 times more powerful effect than current mostly used drugs like alendronate and his for illustration teriparatide. We then, of course, confirmed in larger animal, in sheep, that we saw also had a very strong density increase. And here on the picture, on the histology image, you can nicely see that the new bone breaches the gap between the native bone, which is a sign not only of increase of density, but also on strengthening because of the better microarchitecture. In terms of usage, it was key to confirm that it was radio-opaque to have better control for the surgeon or the interventional radiologist. So here is in the sheep, tibia and femur that we can see around the blue circles that is very easy to sit. Then we did also some testing of injectability and flowability on cadaveric human femurs using micro-CT. So here we injected in 3 spots by getting the needle in, the cannula, and we can see that the gel really nicely interdigitates with the native bone, which is the thing that you want to get the best integration and also to improve the structure of the bone and the density. We finally did a GLP study in a model of critical size defects because we think there is an opportunity to get a quick clearance to a 510(k) as a bone void filler by the FDA. And this is now completed, and we're finalizing the biologic testing to get the dossier completed. So all these animal data and the device characteristics make key opinion leaders very enthusiastic, be it bone specialists from Geneva or Lausanne to New York, and even orthopedic surgeons already that we met are very excited because they see many different kind of applications for this product. That is the first time that flowable hydroxyapatite will be available on the market. So concretely, they all expect now human data. This is what we could expect if the product performs as well in humans as in animals. Here's a case of a woman with severe osteoporosis. She's diagnosed at very high risk. If she uses our product and get one injection, a risk profile will go from very high to low, thanks to a big boost of bone density within months. And this is a game changer for these patients because then they can really enjoy the active aging free of the fear of a fall and stuff like that. So we formed a team since the incorporation in 2020 with many people having experience with the FDA and the US market. Myself, I worked 10 years for J&J. I worked 5 years for a Swiss company in healthcare. And my co-founder, Régis, she developed the product during her PhD thesis. Actually, it's a nice story because she discovered it by chance. Her first goal was to develop a new kind of carrier for drug, to locally deliver drug for osteoporosis, to enhance and do some hardware augmentations. And then when she did the animal study, that's where she discovered that the actual carrier had these amazing properties itself to generate this boost of density and quality of the bone. So that's why we thought, let's now focus on this product. So we got introduced together from our PhD supervisor with a common friend. And lately we recruited a chairman who was the former CEO of Geisig Pharma, one of the leading companies in regenerative medicine, and 2 experts in quality and regulatory to get us through the FDA pathway in the US. So together we build an efficient plan. We will start with the first 510K for this year to complete the dossier, and then in parallel to build up more data to extend the performance claims and to get new indications as a bone strengthener, which will open the door of more application on label. So the business model is quite simple. It's looking for a distribution agreement with one of the large company. We don't plan to build a sales force. We just maybe build up some traction at the HSS in New York or New York area. We already have an independent distributor ready to do that for us. But really the goal is to build clinical evidence and then be acquired once we can show this attractive data. So far, we raised 2.5 million non-dilutive, mostly with awards and grants, including a large one from J&J Innovations through a contest that was organized by the National Academy for Medicine. It was about healthy longevity. So we're very proud to demonstrate that we got some traction and also some recognition just outside Switzerland and Europe, but also in the US. And in parallel, in September 2022, we had a seed round with Business Angel and a VC in Switzerland to raise 2.3 million to further and speed up our developments. And now we are looking for 8 million altogether, with the first part being convertible notes worth 1 million, which 650 are still open. And then it will make our company stronger for the Series A at the end of the year, beginning 2026, when we get the FDA clearance and so a bit more data in terms of the bone strengthening effects in animal studies and preparation of the FDA application, the IDA, and so on. So in short, we have a driven team. We are all very involved in the company in terms of what we want to achieve with this healthy aging. The animal results are really spectacular for now. We get some traction with key opinion leaders and strategics. And now it's really the time for us to get some investor from the US, not to be too much Helvetico Swiss centric, because for now we only have a small investor based in New York working for Novartis. But now we will have to have some smart people that can also support the development in the US so that we don't make too many errors coming from Switzerland. So thank you for your time and looking forward to your questions.
Thanks, Régis. Great.
Thanks. So great presentation, Régis. I'm curious about your FDA strategy. Can you just tell me a little bit more about, you're going to go for a bone void filler indication. What does that cover in those procedures that you kind of mentioned? Then you've got a BVF plus, and then you get to some sort of de novo, and it says BS in your deck. I don't know what BS stands
Bone
for.
strengthener, yeah.
Bone strengthener. So I guess, again, talk me through your logic around the bone void
Sure.
filler piece. I see this all the time, that might be the path of least resistance, but to me, it could be a distraction from the, the golden goose here, which is to go for the real deal. And are you raising the right amount of funds and planning this the right way to get you to what's really going to be a massive value inflection point?
Sure. So first thing, when we incorporate 2020, this is exactly the discussion we have with local investors. And then we looked at the cost of going for the moonshot, for the anti-fracture treatment. And here, then we checked, and then it's about 2,400 patients with 5-year follow-up to demonstrate fracture risk reduction in the hip sector. And one US company started that, and then we talked to some surgeons, and they say it's very, very risky. So then we step back, and then we say, okay, now what are other applications that we can build up data? One of the things that we were really motivated to go through a bone void filler is not to generate sales. There are 150 even more products out there, and the application will be just to enhance hip replacement, like with retrofilling of surgery created or acetabular defects or whatever. But the idea was to say, okay, now we know, and that's what we got from the first investor, the VCs, big VCs in Europe. They said, well, in osteoporosis, the issue is like whatever you do in animal models, there is no guarantee, especially if you have a product based on a natural mode of action, that it will work in humans. So start with an application first to de-risk as quickly as possible that you get the same spectacular effects of bone density increase as you got in sheep, in rabbits, and in rats in osteoporotic patients. So that's why the path of least resistance was to say, let's generate as quickly as possible this data. And then in the end, it was just a question. We didn't find the investor. We were ready to put the 10 or 15 million to start with a study, straight 100 patients with a bone surrogate using density increase, which is now what is in discussion at the FDA as a bone surrogate for fracture risk reduction. So we didn't find this investor. They say, wow, it's way too risky. So that's why we first did the GLP study in rabbits to say, let's keep de-risking with less money. But of course, if somebody would come up and say, yeah, I put 15 million on the table, just start right away the application, the idea, and so on, we will start. Another issue that is clear is like the model of bone strengthening in an animal is very complex. Beside osteoporotic rats, to simulate osteoporosis in sheep or rabbits, we need to do all kind of gimmicks with steroids and so on, and then it would change the metabolism of the animal, and then it's a risk that anyway, or product, if it performs or doesn't perform, we'll never know if it's just because of the root cause of the mode of action.
Thank you. Great commentary.
Additionally, I was going to ask this, Régis. So if you compare the viscosity of the HA, combined with the hydroxyapatite, how does that shift? Because I get the idea that the HA is a carrier more or less, but what could you compare it to?
I think to your toothpaste, to your hydroxyapatite toothpaste that you may use to brush your teeth. So this is the same kind of texture.
It's not granular per se. It's not granular.
Exactly. It's if you look at the scheme I showed, this illustration, it's a biphasic ionic acid cross-linked, and that's why the nanoparticles are kept apart and can act as ossification centers. It's because that's what is really innovative. It's not just a carrier like you use with a normal hydroxyapatite in a fluid. You have to build a structure so that there is a kind of degradation profile that need to give time to the bone and to the nanoparticles to attract the minerals for the biomineralization. And that's why there's a fine balance and fine tuning to design a carrier that allows to keep these nanoparticles spread away so that you don't stack them and then get some problem during the injection. And that's when we did the first study in sheep. The veterinarian was amazed because he said it's so easy to inject. So she had to beat be careful because of this. He was used to push so hard on all these bone void fillers that he said, okay, well, now I can really act very fine with my thumb to control the injection very precisely. So the granule story is exactly the differentiator.
If I may,
so could you see?
You should highlight
people,
that a bit more in your decks. I mean, I think that's a persuasive piece of sort of the puzzle here, and you should try to bring that out a little bit more. You know, just highlight the basic science behind this technology.
And put a tube of Colgate on your.
That's right.
Well, we have our own local toothpaste here.
In most of our heads, right? And Adam and me and David, you know, I'm picturing my time at Medtronic, and I'm picturing HA granules, and I'm picturing how you're going to keep them in place. That problem's solved here.
Yeah.
So really being able to highlight that, I agree, Adam.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
And it's fluoro guided to make sure your placement, dependent upon clinical use, is dead center where you want it, huh?
That's why we added IOXL. Otherwise, you wouldn't see the nanoparticles, of course, because the contrast wouldn't be there. So that's why we added that, so that for the interest injections, you have more control and safety to know exactly where your product ends up.
Okay. And I assume that because you've got 650 left on the convertible note, but you've got a 450 piece of it or whatever you already have taken care of, that you've defined your terms on that note. Is that right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So that for investors is going to be helpful just to guide them into what you're looking for. And then you're anticipating that at the beginning of next year, you're going to move into your priced round.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's why the idea was to pitch today, is to have this open discussion with US investors, so that then we prepare not just this commercial, but the Series A, because we prioritize the US market. And here in Europe, you know, it's with the MDR and the new regulations and so on. I think at some point we need to have some expertise from US investors. That's why we decided also to do now the Congress focus in the US and not go on in Switzerland or in Europe. It's really to add value to the panel of investors and people that can open doors then in the US.
Makes sense. Yeah. Very interesting. Thanks, Régis.
It is. I was going to ask you too, have you guys evaluated, because, you know, Adam knows this, any of the surgeons know this, Rob knows this. If I have an opportunity to bolster what I'm trying to do for a patient relative to Biologics Plus, or have you guys looked, because of course, you know, surgeons are going to do, if they have it available, what happens if you combine this with a DBM, or what happens if you did this, or what happens if you did that, because it's going to happen.
Exactly. And actually, you know, the first time I went to the OR here in Lausanne in the University Hospital to attend a hip replacement and get to know the surgeon, the first thing he said, look, now I'm ordered a DBM, it's kind of costly, but now I don't have enough material, so I have to muck around with the bone that I can retrieve during the revision, mix it. And so he said, your product will be perfect to get these chunks of bone into your carrier, get the hydroxapatite nanoparticle, stimulate everything, and then fill these kind of fascicular defects. So I think for sure they will start to do it. We were thinking of doing, you know, like the testing to get as a graft extender and so on. But we said, yeah, for now, you know, let's focus on a simple way to get in, and then we will discuss how we further develop the product together with surgeons and see if it makes sense to make these special claims. We also had from the HSS surgeons. I said, yeah, well, it's going to be great. I can't wait to mix it with antibiotics, because obviously it's basically an hydrogel. So they say, we can make our own cocktail just before going out of the hospital. So I say, well, help yourself. But, you know, in the end, doing the study to demonstrate that our product doesn't impede the antibody effects, it's too costly, too long, and it's not the core of what we want to achieve. So that's why we say, let's keep it now on the side.
Yeah. So indication for this is initially hip specific?
No, it's lower extremities.
Okay.
Yeah, we went for the simple indication, and then because in spine there's a bit more work to be done with the nerves, and so we said, you know, like let's keep it as confined as possible in terms of the risk management and so on, and then we'll depending on the investor, the amount and traction, we'll see then the best next step.
Yeah. it's a great platform technology. I like this.
Yeah, I love the thought of the subchondral defect application of this too. That's exciting.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the surgeon, Sean McMillan, was of the pioneer in the field in joint preservation, and used one of the company acquired by Zimmer, and now using also a degradable bone cement, calcium phosphate, the Tactoset. So I think it's very interesting to see that they don't need the bone cement, they don't need hardening material, they want to use something to decompress the subchondral bone defects, and then have something that stimulate bone formation. We talk also about osteonecrosis, and so how we could potentially access them percutaneously to stimulate the healing. So yeah, many things to be done, but as always, we need to focus, and we need also guidance now to know in terms of the US market, okay, where do we see the traction? So because in Switzerland, and in Europe, it's a different culture for orthopedic surgeons, and we see it in the amount of bone cementing in hip replacement, US versus Europe. It's like almost the opposite, 25-35%. So yeah, that's why it's critical for us now to really make a big step to the US.
Well, all of us, are here to help in any way we can, Régis. So thank you for taking the time to present.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Régis.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, great presentation. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, David, Rob, Régis, Leanna. I think Leanna had to go to bed. I know, Régis, you're late as well. So thanks to everyone again for joining us. Please reach out to any of the presenters if you have additional questions, or to myself or Drew. We look forward to seeing you at our next event in March. You can RSVP on our site. Hope everyone has a great rest of their evening and afternoon. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Come on.